Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Tuesday's edition, and we're broadcasting from beautiful Southern California and from the great state of Idaho. Andrew Crapuchettes, welcome back to the show. Happy to have you with me today.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Always nice to see you and all your amazing people that watch your show.
Yeah, I tell you what, we've got a great audience, and I got to tell you, they love hearing subjects that we're going to talk about today. And we got a lot of good stuff. I want to talk about red balloon and the economy. But Andrew, just like every conservative talk show host across the country today, we have to deal with the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that's the ridiculous indictment last night that took place in Atlanta. And again, it does seem to cross the political spectrum. If you're on the left or the far left, you're celebrating. If you're on the right, you're ticked off. But even people in the middle are not happy about this. Andrew, there has been a clear erosion, not just of political rights, but rights in general in this country. Your thoughts and comments from people you've talked to about last night?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, and they're losing stamina, and they're like, oh man, another indictment, and they're not even paying attention as much as I think they should be, because these things are really mattering. And I think you've got a lot of liberal DAs that are trying to just get in the news. They're trying to get their name in the news, and Trump is everyone's favorite punching bag. And so, but this is serious stuff,
Yes.
because if you get an indictment in a state, it's not the same. It's not pardonable in the same way. It has some real consequences for Trump, for America, because what we're seeing is kind of a banana republic. Hey, we're just going to arrest our political adversary and then go and try and win the election without that person even in the picture, and that's just wrong. So people should stay paying attention to this, because it really is important. And hopefully this will be an example of Americans realizing this is a big deal, standing up, pushing back, and we'll see how it all plays out, though, Mark.
You know, what's really disturbing to me is people are being charged with a crime that 2 to 4 years ago would have been considered free speech. I mean,
For sure.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, people making statements. I was thinking back about this, and I heard Dick Morris talking about it, and he's right. Some of the stuff that's being charged in 2023 related to what happened in the election, Stacey Abrams and her staff would have been charged under these statutes. I mean, think about when she sued Brian Kemp and the Georgia Election Commission. Think about how she claimed she was the really elected person. I mean, the comparisons are striking, and yet here we are. And look, we can't sugarcoat this. I mean, it's a predominantly Democratic county where Trump was indicted, okay?
Yep.
And it just is. And the likelihood is they can get a conviction with the demographics and the population of DeKalb County. So, I mean, we're in a situation here where it's problematic, and as you correctly stated, the people I talked to last night, whether it be Trump people, independents, they're ticked off. And not just because it's like the fourth indictment, but this one really crosses the line, because now additional people are being brought into this. They're going to have to pay for lawyers. Eventually, if there is a conviction, you and I know this thing will be thrown out on appeal. It will, because there's really no basis for it. But it's going to be a distraction for a long period of time.
Yeah, it's a distraction, but I mean, honestly, it's I think it's playing in, it's going to be good for the Trump campaign in the long run if he can survive all these things, because they're definitely turning him into someone who's standing up for all of us, and I think he is in a lot of ways. You know, we've all seen the poster of they're not going after me, they're going after you. I'm just in the way, right? And when a lot of Americans, more and more Americans believe that, because look, this is absolutely ridiculous to have this type of indictment come down. And I've seen, the number of videos of Democrats complaining that previous elections were not true, or, all the things that they're indicting him about, they've all done. And everyone's seeing that. And I think that's this interesting thing where I think they used to be able to get away with this stuff, and people are like, oh, well, maybe this is real. Nobody believes this is real now.
Right.
And so that's going to be this, again, I hope an optimistic moment where a lot of Americans are like, no, this is a complete kangaroo court, and we can't even listen to this. But what are the ramifications of that? Let's say they indict him. Let's say they get away with it, and then they can't put him in prison, and people are like, no, you're lying. It's not true. Well, where's the rule of law then? Right? When you're abusing the rule of law, it's going to have a huge impact on whether people are even going to listen to any rule of law. So I think this is terrible, and it'll just be really interesting to see how it plays out.
I think it's bad for the Republican Party, too, because now, look, Trump's already leading by 30 to 40 points in virtually every poll. And with the sheer sympathy piece alone of Americans feeling their rights are being trampled on, I do not see how any of the other candidates, and we have some good candidates in this piece here, how in the world they're going to get through on the messaging point of view. I mean, at the debate next week, it's likely that, I don't know whether Trump's going to attend or not, but he's going to be the subject of all the conversation, rightly or wrongly. So, Andrew, if you're one of the up-and-coming rising stars in the GOP, like Vivek, like Ron DeSantis, I mean, I'm just naming a couple here, okay?
Yep.
How do you break through when you have this type situation that you're having to deal with?
Yeah, right now there's not a way to break through. I mean, Mark, we were talking about earlier the number of negative political campaign ads about Ron DeSantis, not just from Trump, but from all over the place. That's some stiff headwinds to be pushing forward with. That's the first thing. The second thing is, Trump has an enormous lead, and if you're a Vivek or if you're a Ron or any of the other candidates at this point, it's going to be really tough to try and catch him. And so what you're playing for is you're playing for a vice president role, or you're playing for a secretary role, or you're playing for some piece of his administration, which isn't the end of the world,
right.
But you need to be gearing yourself accordingly in a lot of these debates.
I never like to say an election's over before they count the votes, because I think that's really problematic. And I've been a steadfast enforcer of this. But honestly, when I was sitting here watching what happened last night, and I was flipping across all the cable networks from Newsmax, CNN, Fox, MSN, whatever, you name it, I was looking at it on different screens because, we talk about this stuff. I'm almost sitting here saying, look, as much as we have a really good quality field of additional candidates, I'm just saying there's no way you can break through. One thing that this has illustrated to me, Andrew, and it goes back to the old saying, he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and his supporters would not be shaken. That has come true in spades. I mean, it doesn't matter anymore. And I don't know if you get the same thing I do, but my email box gets flooded daily with campaign solicitations, phones, texts, you name it. Because I've donated before. I get inundated. And it seems like every time there's an indictment, it goes up fivefold on the solicitations. So God knows how much money he's going to raise off this thing. So anyhow, I don't know. I'm in your camp completely on this, and your listeners and people you talk to are basically telling you the same thing I'm hearing across the political spectrum. And folks, just to be honest with you, independents who are ticked off about this. I mean, it's not just, and even a handful of Democrats, they don't like what they're seeing because they know in their gut it's wrong. So with that said,
even if they hate Trump, they know what's happening right now is just wrong.
Right.
And so, and that's why they kind of are playing into Trump's hand, but it is dangerous, right? Because some of these indictments really are, they hold legal weight. Yes. And so that's going to be this, he's playing catch with the tiger right now. So we'll see how how this plays out.
And one final comment, particularly in the federal cases, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the state one, but there's restrictions on what he can say and can't say. How does a candidate for president operate under those type of rules?
Right.
Bizarre. All right, look, I want to shift away from the 800-pound gorilla for just a minute, and I want to talk about something that's near and dear to you and my heart, which is both the red balloon economy and the United States economy. You've just published a paper basically called The Freedom Economy. And I've read through it. It's 25, 26 pages long. And boy, Andrew, the stuff that you and I literally talked about going back about a year, 6 months ago, everything that we previously talked about has come to fruition, and you've sort of documented via this document. Talk to our audience of viewers and listeners about your research, what you've learned, and how all this came about.
Yeah. So a lot of us who are kind of conservatives, and we're just trying to live our lives, grow our business, small businesses all across this country. Look, we don't have lobbyists on payroll. We don't have the ability to really influence politics or the media. We're just trying to run our welding shop or our ice cream shop or run our mom and pop, whatever it is. And I wanted to give voice to those people, because those are those people, those businesses are the lifeblood of our economy. There's 32 million small businesses in America today. And those businesses don't feel like they have a voice. They feel like, look, the vast majority of Americans who are influencing politics and the media are at these really large organizations. And so we wanted to give those people a voice. So here's what we did. We teamed up with Public Square, publicsq.com, and we surveyed all of our businesses at Red Balloon and all of their businesses at Public Square. And what this did is this produced this interesting connection where we now have over 50,000 businesses in this freedom economy. And we can start to ask their opinions on a whole variety of issues, whether it's political or economic or social issues, and kind of start to get the pulse of a group of people that otherwise you can't hear from. They don't have a voice. And so we called it the Freedom Economy Index, the FEI. And this survey is really the first of its kind, giving a voice to this huge group of Americans that are just trying to keep their head down, raise their family, build their business. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff that came out of this, with thousands of businesses saying, yeah, I'd like to make sure that DC and the media know what's going on in my head and in my business. So that's what the FEI is. And it's been a really fun adventure to be able to support and represent a lot of those businesses.
Weren't some of the facts that came out of the research as follows, that businesses that operate in red states tended to be much more optimistic than blue state businesses? And the biggest concern, it seemed, whether you're in a red state or a blue state, was government overregulation and taxation. Talk a little bit about those two trends, Andrew.
Yeah, what's interesting is you have a lot of these businesses that are optimistic about their business. So you have greater than 60% of the businesses that we're working with are saying, yes, I'm hiring, I'm optimistic that my business is doing well right now and that I'm going to succeed in business. Whereas they are very concerned, 80% of the businesses are concerned about a recession, either a mild or a severe recession. And so there's this interesting kind of tale of two economies that's happening right now. You have businesses in red states or businesses that are part of this freedom economy, part of this red economy, that are doing very, very well. They're hiring, they're growing. I talked to one HVAC business that is booked for 2 years right now. So they're absolutely crushing it in business. And it's this kind of funny concept, right? Well, what if you just work hard, you do what you say you're going to do for the price you say you're going to do it, lo and behold, you're going to do well in business. Whereas if you're Silicon Valley Bank and you spend all your time focusing on microaggression training and donating to BLM and DEI training and ESG scores, well, lo and behold, you're not focused on your business, which is protecting people's money, growing people's money. You're focused on all these social issues, and your business is going to fail. And we're seeing that play out all over the place. So these blue economies in places like New York and California, Illinois, where businesses are struggling because they're fighting through this taxation with regulation, and a lot of them are worried about the DEI mandates and the ESG mandates that are coming from the federal government and from the state government. Because when you do those kind of things, you're just causing the business to focus on something other than their business, and they're going to struggle. No matter what your political point of view is, a business should focus on their business.
Have you noticed the backlash against ESG, environmental social governance, even places like, the poster child, Larry Fink at BlackRock? It's rarely mentioned anymore. It's almost like we don't want to be any part of it, because companies that, as you correctly just said, focused on that, their performance substantially was below the market because these outside ideas where the left is trying to push you into a certain category and make sure you're compliant with leftist rules, it didn't work and it doesn't work.
That's right. That's right. And what's happening is this should be encouraging to all Americans. You're seeing this backlash against these political ideologies from the left, this woke ideology that's been so pervasive in a lot of our businesses. But they're now getting a scorecard, right? It used to be that we would, debate what policies were the best or what company policies or economic policies were the best. But we have a scorecard now. The red states are thriving. Their economies are booming. There's prosperity for families in places like Florida and Texas. And you have states like California and New York that are struggling to balance their budget. And you have an enormous exodus of some of the hardest working Americans leaving those states. Well, when you do that, you have a scorecard. It's fantastic. And businesses that are focused on these things are also doing that. So the good news is, and I've always, Red Balloon's been around about redeeming the world of work, helping businesses, because there are still capitalists in these businesses. They're kind of captured by some of these political ideologies. But at the end of the day, they still want to make money. Yep. And we're finding out from Budweiser, from Target, from a lot of these organizations, if you don't focus on your customers and being a blessing to your customers, you're going to struggle in business. And the capitalists are still winning out because they want to make money. And the way that you make money is to actually do good things for your customers.
I had a debate with a liberal the other day, and that individual was talking to me about how horrific it is in Florida, because of all these DeSantis policies and, how they're teaching African-American education and don't say gay. And I'm saying, really? I said, where are you sort of getting your facts from? I said, she says, well, I read it on the news and hear it on people. I said, well, did you ever think, why are 800 people a day moving into the state? No, that can't be true. Oh, yes, it is true.
It is true.
It is true. And I said, what do you think about the fact that it's a low tax state? There's no state income tax. There was freedom during COVID that a lot of states didn't have. We elected a Republican governor. We have a majority Republican House and Senate, so that these horrific Democratic ideals cannot ever, not ever, but for right now, can't happen in the state of Florida. And outside of the fact it's really hot in the summer, overall it's a pretty damn nice place to be. Well,
for sure.
They didn't have any answer to those questions, of course. And it wasn't just Florida. I mean, I could name other, Idaho, Texas, among others. I mean, North Carolina's a purple state, but again, similar type characteristics. Low taxation, less government regulation, less ESG, less woke ideology policies. Enforce the rule of law, play by the rules. Don't do stupid stuff like defund the police. Don't do no bail laws. What happened out here in Los Angeles the other day, criminals just rampaging through a high-end department store in a nice area of town. And with get out on bail free card, I mean, what the heck? They stole $100,000 worth of merchandise and the crime's out of control. But Andrew, again, Red Balloon and its customers, they're thriving. And yet, now let me ask you this. This is going to be a tough political question here. Strip Joe Biden out for just a second.
Okay.
Everybody on Wall Street has been talking about soft landing. Some people say, it's going to be a hard landing. There's some in the camp that says there's no landing. I've been listening to this over the last 6 months, and I'm saying, I have never seen an economy go into a recession with plus or minus 3.5% unemployment. Okay, I mean, it just doesn't happen. I'm looking at hourly wage gains. Now, it may be problematic from an inflation point of view, but right now, wages are outstripping inflation by about 2 points. So I'm saying, okay, yeah, we've got an inflation problem. It's still too high, running, pick your numbers, producer price index, consumer price index, 3.5% to 4.5%. That's double what's acceptable. And I'm not even sure the acceptable number of 2 is the right number. But Andrew, here's my point. With that unemployment rate, inflation has come down, and whether you want to give the Fed credit or not, some of the policies have worked. The actual money supply has contracted somewhat. Well, you can't have inflation when you're contracting the money. A little bit.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Why does Joe Biden get no credit? Because he's
Yeah.
trying to say it's the Biden economy. Most people say, no, it's really not. It's not, because the Fed has more influence than anyone. Employers do, red state people. I mean, what's your feeling on this? Because normally, and my Republican friends don't like when I say this, but if it was a Republican in the White House and they had these numbers, Andrew,
Right.
just to be fair, and we cut through the propaganda, you'd have some bragging points there. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Joe Biden and the administration have the distinct advantage of having the American people we are a can-do group of people who think about our businesses. And this is, back to this Freedom Economy Index, when you have most of the businesses are excited about how well their business is doing and they're hiring and they're booming, but they're really worried about recession. I think the reality is we Americans have this Protestant work ethic where we say, look, we're going to take responsibility for our business no matter what economic policies come at us. And we're going to say, we're going to focus on doing our work, on building our business, on leading our family, whatever it is, we're going to do our job. And we're not going to worry too much about what's coming out of DC or New York or any of those places. Now, I think the Fed has been mucking with the economy long enough because a lot of these small businesses are feeling the interest rates way more than big businesses because small businesses need capital.
Yes,
right?
they do.
And so, and I think it's terrifying that the Fed would consider themselves to have done a good job if a lot of Americans lose their job, right? And what government organization should have its goal of causing Americans to be unemployed? So and that's maybe a side topic, and that's my concern about the Fed. But you're absolutely right. The economy is, we have not been growing. We're more of a slow growth economy right now.
Yeah.
We have, I think the employment and the unemployment numbers, that's more based on the fact that we don't have enough people to do all the work.
Yeah.
We've had a population that has been stable or declining a little bit. The birth rate has been low for many, many years.
Yeah.
And so it's more around population that the unemployment rate is low, but it's going to be really hard to have a recession if you have roughly full employment. So you're absolutely right on that. I think the Biden economics, the U.S. economy is growing despite the Biden economics.
I agree.
And the American people have a can-do attitude. We're going to continue to have full employment because we don't have enough people. And I think the economy will just kind of mosey along. It's not going to be hot and exciting, but it's not going to go into a major recession.
Now let's talk about things that could cause it to derail. Earlier today, again, when I was doing my other job, I noticed that 30-year mortgages were now 7.15. Okay. 10-year notes well above 4% now. A couple weeks ago, it actually dipped below 4. China. Okay, here's the really contrast. Japan's economy booming. When's the last time you heard Japan booming? It's up 1.5% in a quarter, which is 6% annualized. China, on the other hand, had to cut interest rates because they have so many young people out of work. And they've built so much stuff over there, it's not even in use. The Russian ruble fell to less than a penny. It now takes 100 rubles to get $1, 101 earlier this morning, which, talks about the failures of Putin's war. But with, China pulling one way, Japan the other way, Russia going this way, the U.S. is pretty steady there. Now, 7% mortgage rates aren't going to help anybody, particularly, someone like yourself who's a developer, okay? But at the same time, Andrew, we have another issue. All these people that borrowed money previously at 3 and 4%, they're not going to sell their houses.
No.
Why would you? You're going to sell a house to go into, and now you're going to pay 7 when you currently have 3 to 4? Andrew, how's that going to play? Because I do think 2 industries are going to be affected quickly. Home builders, bankers, and I think the automobile business too. I mean, stuff that consumers want to buy, but maybe they're okay with what they have, and maybe they'll keep that car a little longer. And I don't know if you've noticed, but gas prices here in Southern California, $5.50 a gallon. So, what do you say?
Well, and the problem with home building is if you looked at last year, so 2020, and I believe these numbers are correct. I'll have a fact checker check me, but you had 20 million new households created. So people who were now in a position to go out and buy a home, to live in a home, whether they got married or they're just moving out. So 2 million new household creations and only 1.4 million new house starts last year. So the issue is, regardless of that interest rate, people still need somewhere to live. Yeah. And they're going to have to kind of power through and figure out what that looks like. They're either going to rent or they're going to buy a beater home or whatever it is. I think cars are a different issue, where you can live with a car for a lot longer. You probably have a used car. But the housing issue, there has not been enough housing starts to be able to deal with the demand. And so even with that interest rate up, I would anticipate that we're going to continue to have demand for housing. At least that's what I'm hoping for, because I am a developer. The other issue that you brought up around what's happening geopolitically, look, I'm talking to a lot of these businesses that I talked to a $1 billion business recently, had their best sales year in 2022, but they can't deliver the revenue because they're waiting for chips coming out of Asia right now. And a lot of these businesses are trying to onshore not only their labor, but their supply chain. They're trying to verticalize their supply chain because they are concerned about the geopolitical issues that are coming down the pipe. Right. And so if you are dependent on Ukraine or anything around Ukraine and Russia, if you're dependent on Asia, anything connected to China, lo and behold, you're going to be very, very concerned because we learned through COVID, if you're dependent on things coming out of China and they have a geopolitical issue, whether it's COVID or their opinion of the U.S., it might disrupt your business. And so I think the U.S. economy is also going to get a nice boost because of all the jobs that are going to be coming back to the U.S. that we don't have enough people for. So anyway, there's a lot of dynamics going on in the U.S. economy that are very fascinating, and it's a fun time to be alive.
Andrew, we got just a couple minutes left. Okay, I want your opinion on the following. Okay, where are we going economically, and do you see anything on the political front that's going to change the projected Trump-Biden matchup?
So where are we going as an economy? I think we're going to have a steady growth economy despite Biden economics and despite the Fed, because of all these other geopolitical and labor market dynamics. And if you are a business that is in one of these red states, or if you're a red business that actually just believes in freedom, you're probably going to do very well over the next several years. On the political side, no. I think we're headed for a Biden-Trump matchup. That I think there's things that Trump could do to win, but I'm a little concerned that he won't do them. So there you go. There's my opinion. Take it for what it's worth.
Well, I will agree on both of those comments, but I am going to add one little piece to this, and I always say this: don't think an election's over before the first vote's counted. Okay, we say it many, time after time. Things happen in politics. And again, we're not taking sides here. The numbers are what the numbers are, and every poll in America says it's going to be Biden, Trump. We don't know what it's going to look like if No Labels throws a candidate in there. We don't know how much Cornel West is going to take away from the ultra liberals. I still remember in 2000, and I'll close it on a humorous note here in Palm Beach County, because I was there, how Pat Buchanan garnered a lot of votes from liberal Jewish people. And it was because of the ballot, and maybe their eyesight wasn't that good, but whatever happens, you don't know until people vote. So folks, it looks like it's Trump-Biden redo, but strange things happen in politics. And Andrew, again, we'll play it out as it goes along. We've got a lot of time for it. I really want to thank you for coming on today. It's great seeing you again. I'm so happy for the growth of Red Balloon. You guys are growing like crazy because you've got a great product, you're in a great business, and you support the things that business owners want. So thank you again for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, and everybody have a great day.
Okay, folks, that's it for today. We'll be back on Thursday. Stay safe, prosper, and we'll cut through all the nonsense. See you on Thursday. Have a good evening.